An offshore oil platform is not just an extraction point, it is a floating industrial city, a power plant, a drilling plant, and a processing facility gathered into a single structure that operates 24 hours a day. To the naked eye, it looks like a collection of beams, cranes, pipes, and metal decks raised above the sea. But the most complex part is not above, but below, on the ocean floor, under thousands of meters of water, and even further down, within geological layers that have held oil trapped for millions of years. Extracting crude oil from the sea requires solving several problems at the same time. First, the deposit must be located, then the platform must be fixed or stabilized in deep waters. Next, a well is drilled that passes through sediments, compact rocks, and zones of very high pressure. Finally, when the crude reaches the surface, it still needs to be separated, stabilized, and sent via pipelines or tankers toward the mainland. All of this occurs in an environment where wind, currents, salt, pressure, and the risk of fire or blowout turn any error into an enormous threat. This is how a modern oil platform works, and this is how oil is extracted from the sea. It all starts long before the platform arrives at the oil field. Oil is not searched for blindly. Before drilling, companies study the geology of the marine subsoil for years. To do this, they use specialized ships that emit seismic waves toward the ocean floor. These waves penetrate the layers of sediment and rock, bounce off their different boundaries, and return to the surface where they are captured by sensors. Afterward, massive computer systems convert that information into three-dimensional maps of the subsoil. Geologists do not see oil directly. What they see are geological traps, structures where crude could have been trapped for millions of years. Folds, faults, porous reservoirs covered by impermeable layers, and even salt domes capable of deforming strata and creating sealed compartments. When the data suggests there is a profitable deposit, the development phase begins. Depending on the water depth and the type of field, a fixed platform, a semi-submersible, a drill ship, or a large floating production unit is installed. In very deep waters, the structure does not rest on the bottom like a traditional coastal platform. It floats. But floating does not mean being free. It has to stay in an exact position over the well, sometimes with minimal margins of error. To achieve this, mooring systems with giant lines attached to the seabed or dynamic positioning systems controlled by computers and thrusters are used. In the case of large production platforms in deep waters, the scale is colossal. They can rise like a building of more than 20 stories above the surface and work in marine depths exceeding 2,000 meters. Just reaching the bottom of the ocean already represents a considerable technical operation. The mooring lines must withstand waves, metal fatigue, corrosion, and the constant force of currents. Many times they end in suction anchors, huge hollow structures that are fixed to the bottom by pressure difference and remain buried in the sediment. Each of those anchors must be placed with precision because the stability of the entire installation depends on them. The platform also needs constant support from the surface. Supply vessels transport fuel, water, food, pipes, drilling mud, spare parts, and personnel. Helicopters bring and take workers from the coast. Life on board is organized by long shifts, normally of 2 or 3 weeks, in intense 12-hour workdays. On that structure live and work drillers, crane operators, electricians, mechanics, engineers, welders, instrument technicians, safety technicians, well control specialists, and entire crews dedicated to keeping the facility in continuous operation. A modern offshore platform is almost a small industrial city. It has dormitories, a kitchen, an infirmary, control rooms, workshops, firefighting systems, power plants, storage tanks, compressors, and communication equipment. Its energy consumption is enormous. To operate pumps, drawworks, generators, process systems, cranes, and drilling equipment, high-power engines and turbines are needed that work without rest. Any unscheduled stop costs a fortune. But money is not the only factor. In the middle of the sea, operational continuity is also a matter of safety. The environment gives no truce. Salt corrodes, wind punishes, metal surfaces become slippery, waves move heavy loads, and hydrocarbons add a permanent risk of fire or explosion. Therefore, before drilling, the platform must transform into a space of absolute discipline. There are evacuation routes, emergency drills, strict protocols for hot work, continuous gas detection, and detailed procedures for every maneuver. On land, a mechanical failure can be serious. At sea, hundreds of kilometers from the coast, it can turn into a total crisis. Once the platform is stabilized and the exact point of the well has been confirmed, the operation that defines the entire system begins: drilling. From above, only a derrick and a central opening are visible, but in reality a column of pipes, tools and equipment is being prepared that will descend thousands of meters, first through the water, then through the seabed, and finally into the Earth's crust. That is the true heart of the oil platform. It does not float on the sea to stay on the surface. It floats to pierce through it. Drilling a marine well is one of the most demanding industrial operations in existence. The goal is to open a stable conduit from the platform to the underground reservoir. To do this, the drilling rig lowers a long train of pipes assembled one after another. Each section of pipe is joined to the next by reinforced threads, forming a column that can weigh hundreds or thousands of tons. In deep waters, just getting from the deck to the bottom of the sea already requires dozens of sections, but that is barely the beginning. Afterward, the drill bit continues drilling thousands of additional meters through soft sediments, shales, sandstones, and increasingly hard rock formations. At the tip is the drill bit. It is not a simple piece. It is a tool designed to crush rock under extreme pressure with inserts of carbide or industrial diamond depending on the type of formation. As it rotates, it cuts and grinds the rock at the bottom of the well, but a drill bit by itself is not enough. It must be cooled, lubricated, the hole must be stabilized, and the crushed fragments removed. That is where one of the most important elements of the entire operation comes into play: the drilling mud. The mud is not common dirt. It is a technical fluid formulated with great precision. It can contain water, synthetic oils, special clays, polymers, weighting agents, and chemical additives. Its job is manifold. First, it descends through the inside of the pipe to the bit and exits through small nozzles at high pressure. This helps to cool the tool and transport the rock cuttings. Then it ascends through the annular space between the pipe and the well walls, carrying all the crushed material toward the surface. Additionally, the weight of the mud exerts hydrostatic pressure on the formations passed through. That pressure is fundamental because it prevents the well walls from collapsing and, above all, keeps subsoil fluids under control. This point is decisive. Under the seafloor, there are zones where oil, gas, and formation water are trapped at enormous pressures. If the mud pressure is insufficient, these fluids can invade the well. This sudden entry is known as a kick. If it is not detected in time and not controlled correctly, it can turn into a blowout, an uncontrolled eruption in which oil and gas rise violently to the surface. That is the worst possible scenario on a platform because it combines high pressure, flammable hydrocarbons, and the risk of human and environmental disaster. That is why drilling proceeds in stages. A single hole is not made from the beginning to the end. First, an initial section of large diameter is drilled, then a casing pipe is inserted, which reinforces the well walls. Afterward, cement is pumped through the space between that pipe and the rock, creating a structural seal. When the cement sets, that section remains isolated and protected. Then, a second, narrower section is drilled inside the first, another casing is placed, and it is cemented again. This process is repeated several times, creating a kind of underground telescope made of steel and cement. Each section protects the next and keeps the different pressure zones controlled. On the seafloor, one of the most famous and critical pieces of equipment in the offshore industry is also installed: the blowout preventer, or BOP. It is an enormous structure of valves, gates, and hydraulic systems mounted on the wellhead. Its function is simple to describe and extremely difficult to execute under real pressure. To close the well immediately if something goes wrong. The BOP can seal the space around the pipe or even shear the pipe itself if necessary, isolating the reservoir from the outside. It is, in essence, the last great wall of defense between the well and a catastrophe. Since the BOP works on the bottom of the sea, its installation and maintenance depend largely on remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. These underwater machines are the eyes and hands of the platform at depths where a human being cannot intervene directly. They carry cameras, lights, sensors, and manipulator arms capable of opening valves, connecting hoses, inspecting structures, and verifying the position of equipment. In waters of more than 2,000 meters, the darkness is total, the temperature drops, and the pressure would crush any diver. Without ROVs, much of modern offshore production would be unfeasible. As the drilling descends, engineers constantly analyze rock cuttings, pressure, mud density, rate of penetration, and numerous data sent by measuring tools located near the bit. These tools make it possible to know if the well is following the planned trajectory and if it is approaching the correct reservoir. In many cases, the well does not go down in a straight line. It is drilled directionally to reach lateral targets kilometers away horizontally. Thus, a single platform can exploit several wells that start from the same point on the surface and branch out like limbs underground. When the bit finally reaches the producing formation, drilling enters an even more delicate phase. The well now exists, but it does not yet produce. First, it must be completed, isolated, equipped and prepared so that the oil flows safely. After passing through the formation that contains the oil, the work does not end. In many ways, it just changes phase. The well must be completed in a way that the crude can come out without causing collapses, unwanted water entries, or leaks into other layers. To do this, the final casing is lowered, the corresponding zone is cemented, and completion elements are installed that turn the drilled hole into a controlled, productive conduit. The problem is that the steel and cement, which are essential for stabilizing the well, also block the passage of oil. Therefore, a special perforating tool is used. This descends to the depth of the reservoir and fires small explosive charges directed against the well wall. Those charges pierce the casing pipe, pass through the cement, and penetrate a few centimeters into the producing rock. This creates communication tunnels between the deposit and the interior of the well. The oil, which is under natural pressure in the reservoir, then finds a path to start flowing. In some fields, that natural flow is sufficient. In others, artificial lift systems, gas injections, subsea pumps, or pressure maintenance strategies are needed to sustain production. But even when the reservoir pushes on its own, what reaches the surface is not clean oil. The initial flow is usually a violent mixture of crude natural gas, salt water, fine sand, and other sediments. The platform does not only extract, it also processes. On the upper deck and in special modules of the hull, the separation equipment is located. The first step usually occurs in large pressurized vessels where gas is separated from the liquid by density difference and pressure drop. The released gas can be compressed, treated and sent by pipeline, reused as fuel for the platform itself, or re-injected depending on the facility. The remaining liquid still contains water and solids, so it passes through other separators, heaters, filters and treatment systems until the crude reaches the necessary conditions for its transport. That stage is as important as the drilling. Crude that is too loaded with water, sand or gas cannot simply be sent to a refinery. It must be stabilized, impurities must be reduced, and its vapor pressure controlled. Additionally, the produced water contains hydrocarbons and salts, so it requires specific treatment before its re-injection or controlled discharge according to environmental standards. Nothing on a modern oil platform functions as a simple open pipe. Everything passes through measuring equipment, valves, control systems, and safety devices. Once treated, the oil leaves the platform via subsea pipelines or through loading systems toward tankers. In giant fields, entire networks of pipes run along the bottom of the sea for dozens or hundreds of kilometers to coastal terminals. From there, the crude enters the next great link in the chain, refining. But on board the platform, the most difficult part has already occurred. The oil has gone from being trapped under kilometers of rock and water to circulating through a controlled industrial network. All of this happens while the platform continues to face constant threats. The sea does not stop moving, loads change, equipment wears out. Gas can appear where it should not. A spark in the wrong place is enough to trigger an emergency. That is why every system is duplicated or backed up by another. There are automatic gas detectors, fire networks, emergency shutdown valves, electrically classified zones, evacuation protocols, and support vessels ready to intervene. Safety is not an additional layer. It is the basic condition of existence for the entire platform. There is also the human factor. Those who work there endure constant noise, aggressive weather, confined spaces, long shifts, and the mental pressure of knowing that every maneuver matters. The platform produces thanks to engineering, but above all, thanks to the rigorous coordination between highly specialized people. A lifting operation, a pipe connection, an anomalous pressure reading. A preventive inspection or a decision made in seconds can mark the difference between a normal day and a serious incident.